Welcome. This is brought to you by the team at HireWire Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Sarah. Today, we're really looking closely at the June 2025 labor market data, and specifically what it all means, particularly for recruiters. And we're drawing quite a bit from industry leader Bob Marshall's insights here.
Yes, we've got a stack of recent reports. Think Bureau of Labor Statistics, ADP, UKG, the Conference Board. And alongside those, Bob Marshall's commentary, our aim is really to pull out the most critical pieces to help you understand what's happening right now.
Exactly. We want to look beyond just the headlines, figure out what these numbers actually signify, and also explore how artificial intelligence is, well, changing the hiring space. Bob Marshall has some valuable thoughts on the challenges and the opportunities there, too.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. The June 2025 labor stats. We saw the ADP National Employment Report showing a private sector job loss of 33,000 in June. But then the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported a gain in total non-farm payrolls, about 147,000. So definite difference there.
That divergence is really interesting, isn't it? And important for recruiters. ADP highlighted losses in professional and business services, also education and health. But there were gains elsewhere: leisure, hospitality, manufacturing. And here's a key detail. Almost all the net job creation, 30,000 jobs specifically, came from really large companies, those with 500 plus employees. Small and medium businesses, they actually saw job reductions. And as Bob Marshall often points out, those SMBs are usually the bread and butter for many recruiters.
Right. That's a significant shift. Now, looking at unemployment, the standard rate, the U3, it dipped slightly to 4.1% in June. And then there's the broader U6 measure. That includes people, marginally attached or working part-time because they can't find full-time work. That also fell down to 7.7%.
Yeah, both showing some tightness. But what's quite striking is this other number, the not in labor force population. That group grew by 329,000 just from the previous month. These are often people who've stopped looking, maybe discouraged workers, and that group has swelled by nearly 2.8 million in just 1 year. This pushes the overall employment participation rate down to 62.3%. That's lower than back in September 2015, even lower than October 1977. And it makes you wonder, as Bob Marshall brings up, how are these folks getting by without income?
That's a serious question.
Yeah.
And Dr. Neela Richardson at ADP had an interesting take. She observed that layoffs are still rare, but there's this hesitancy to hire, maybe a reluctance to even replace people who leave.
Yeah.
And that led to the job losses ADP reported. So caution, not mass cuts.
Exactly. A kind of cautious holding pattern, maybe.
So, okay, let's translate this. What's the practical takeaway for recruiters? Bob Marshall offers some clarity here. That overall unemployment number, 4.1%, it can hide what's really going on for specific skills. If you break it down, the rate for, say, management, professional, and related workers was only 2.8% in June. And for people with college degrees, just 2.5%. Those are incredibly low numbers.
They really are. It suggests for those specific high-skill groups, it's practically zero unemployment. Think about Milton Friedman's idea, the natural rate of unemployment. The idea that even a healthy economy has some base level of unemployment, maybe 4 or 6% just due to friction, transitions. Well, Bob Marshall points out, if you apply that thinking to these professional and degreed roles with rates under 3%, well, effectively, there's no unemployment there. For recruiters targeting that talent, it means the market is incredibly tight. You have to be really strategic.
That is a fundamental challenge, isn't it? It also kind of connects to what Henry Hazlitt wrote in Economics in One Lesson. His point was that production is the goal. Employment is just the means. And we also saw real GDP actually decrease slightly, 0.5% annual rate in the first quarter of 2025, mostly due to imports rising and government spending falling. So some mixed signals in the economy.
Right. And it's important to remember, zero unemployment just isn't possible, or even desirable, maybe. You always have those 5 sources: cyclical, frictional, structural, seasonal, surplus unemployment. People are always moving between jobs, retraining, seasons change. Bob Marshall consistently makes this point. The rate's never going to be zero. And actually, very low unemployment can put upward pressure on wages, which can then fuel inflation. So there's a balance.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. Artificial intelligence. It's everywhere in hiring discussions now. There was that UKG survey found most U.S. employees see AI as best for automating tasks, not really taking over entire jobs. They view it more like a tool, something to help them. And about 79% think it could free them up for more important work. That suggests people are kind of ready for it, in a way.
It does. And it's interesting how specific they get about how AI could help. Like 83% could see it summarizing company policies, or 81% creating work schedules, even verifying paychecks, 78% approving time off, 74%. And Generation Z seems to be really leaning in. 70% of them are actively teaching themselves AI tools. That's way ahead of older generations. Shows how fast this is integrating.
The potential is definitely there, but there are also cautionary tales. Look at the Career Builder and Monster merger. Part of why that struggled, according to their bankruptcy filing, was intense competition from newer AI-driven hiring tools.
Hmm.
So AI isn't just a helper tool, it's a competitive force shaking up the market. The merger aimed for cost savings, but ran into slower hiring and this rapidly changing tech landscape.
That's a really stark example, and it leads to a big question. How do companies use AI in recruiting without losing their soul, their unique identity? Leslie Vickery wrote a great piece on this. The number of employers using AI in recruitment tripled in just 1 year. And Bullhorn data suggests 60% of job seekers are okay with AI handling parts of the hiring process. Speed is expected now, it's table stakes. But the real differentiator, combining that speed with a really great candidate experience.
Right, the human touch. How candidates feel about the interaction, that becomes even more critical. AI can be programmed to reflect a company's voice, its values, its culture. It involves things like a voice check. Does the automated message sound like us? Is it stuffy or friendly or whatever a brand is? And a values check. Can AI help show transparency, maybe with automated updates? Or share community involvement stories?
Exactly. And a personalization check, too. Tailoring the information AI provides based on the role or the candidate's career stage. Maybe sharing stories from similar employees. Done right, AI can actually build trust. Think about automating follow-ups so candidates don't feel ghosted. That's huge. Ghosting creates negative buzz, people won't refer others. Using AI for consistent communication shows you care, builds loyalty, maybe even turns candidates into advocates. It's about enhancing the human touch at scale, using AI for speed and anticipation, but keeping the company's authentic character.
Okay, let's bring this all back to the recruiter's desk, building on Bob Marshall's observations. The official JOLTS report, Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, showed 7.8 million job openings in May. Sounds like a lot. But Bob Marshall highlights something critical here, that 7.8 million, that might only be about 20% of the real number of available jobs.
Precisely. He argues the other 80%, which is a massive number, maybe 39 million published and hidden jobs, get filled differently. They're filled through networks, word of mouth, or crucially, by using a recruiter. This shows where recruiters really add value accessing that huge hidden market that isn't on the public job boards. That's a recruiter's leverage.
And Bob Marshall also reinforces the core recruiter function, finding those candidates who are already doing well, happy, appreciated, well-paid. The job is to entice them with something even better, especially where new tech is creating new kinds of roles. That fundamental approach doesn't really change.
No, it doesn't. And one last key insight from Bob Marshall, regardless of what the overall unemployment rate is doing, recruiters just have to keep doing what they do, marketing to get the best job orders and recruiting the best possible candidates for those jobs. And he really emphasizes that small and medium-sized companies remain the core business, the bread and butter, especially for contingency recruiters. They have to stay central to your niche.
Well, that's certainly a comprehensive look at the current market and AI's role. From those tricky unemployment numbers to using AI strategically, and Bob Marshall's view on just how big the job market really is. It's clear things are complex and moving fast.
They really are. We've seen that even as AI takes over tasks and the market shifts, that core recruiter role-making connections, accessing hidden opportunities is as vital as ever. Understanding that gives you a real edge.
So as you digest all this, maybe think about this. How will these economic undercurrents and this tech evolution shape your own strategy in the months ahead? Especially when thinking about finding talent in that huge hidden job market Bob Marshall described.
Thank you for joining us for this analysis of the latest trends. We really hope it's given you some valuable things to consider for your work.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Sarah. Until next time.